I'm pleased to be joined by former Oklahoma coach and one of my favorite coaches, Cale Gundy. Cale, how you doing, Coach?
I'm doing great. Thanks for letting me come on your show.
I appreciate you taking some time to talk with us because, well, we saw some good things, we saw some bad things when Oklahoma played Tennessee in its first SEC matchup. I think we're all in agreement that the defense is pretty damn good. However, Coach, you being an offensive coach for 23 years at Oklahoma, a national championship, 14 Big 12 titles, if I got that right. What do you
Yes,
see, Coach? What do you see?
I see a great defense that gives us hope, and the script has been flipped in many years from offensively being the team that is the most dominant side of football, and winning games 45-13, 45-17, or 45-24, or whatever. And now all of a sudden, I mean, you're in the SEC. SEC is a little bit like the NFL. Most games between two good teams are going to be in the 20s anyways. It just is what it is. So everybody's got to get used to that. But I am so excited about this defense. I mean, as an offensive guy, I appreciate it. It's hard to. There's been many times that you have to go out there, score 40, 45, 50 points a game to win a game, and but we never we knew that, but we never let it get in the way of us being a team and continuing to play together as one. So the defense has got to carry the offense. There's no doubt the offense is having some problems, struggling, but the defense is good enough, which we saw last week versus Tennessee. It's just unfortunate the level of competition has stepped up, and from here on out, except when you play Maine, you're going to be in a dogfight every Saturday.
Stuck my neck out because that's what I'm going to do. Folks that know about me know that I cover the sport nationally, but I got here talking about Oklahoma, and I'm from Oklahoma. So the thing that I would tell people is that it ain't so much that Oklahoma got to be ready for the SEC; it's that the SEC got to be ready for Oklahoma. All of a sudden, we got folks that one don't want to acknowledge the defense, but also are looking at the quarterback position in particular, and not really taking into account how the offensive line may or may not be working and being healthy on the outside. I wonder, do you think I'm going to be right in the long run, or are we just going to have to stick through this?
No, you're going to be right in the long run. There's no doubt. If the defense is playing at this level, why can't the offense play at this level? For 2 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, we would never have said this about the defense. It'd have been, the defense is the side of the ball that's going to struggle and they're going to get beat to death. The offense is going to keep us in games. But that's not the case now. So, but if the defense can do that, if Brent Venables and his defensive staff can get it to that level, why can't the offense get to that level? And the offense has been at that level. I mean, we've had plenty of offenses around here for many years that would step in the SEC and compete against anybody and be one of the very best teams in the SEC. So, I have faith because if one side of the ball can do it with the players that you have there, there's no reason why you can't do it on the other side of the ball as well.
What makes that defense so good to your eyes? Because I'm looking at some of the things that they're doing, and some of it seems fundamental, but those fundamentals weren't there 2 years ago. And then
Yeah.
last year, it felt like it was coming into fruition. And this year, it feels like they really know what they're doing. They're locked in.
Well, what they do on that side of the ball with Coach Venables is they're very multiple. Okay, so that's why it takes time. I mean, it takes time to really learn that defense because they're going to do a bunch of different things. They're going to put those guys in a bunch of different positions. They're going to disguise. They're going to have blitzes. It's very complicated to learn. I mean, it'd be like trying to learn some Chinese. I mean, it's going to take you a while to do that. As a matter of fact, you probably learn Chinese faster than you can learning that defense. But that's why it took some time. And here's the other thing: what they did is they recruited very well. I mean, they have a solid two deep on that side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, that can play in a two deep for anybody in the country. There's no doubt in my mind. And they got the right mentality players. They've got guys not only that have good size, but they got a lot of skill guys, the linebackers and DBs and safeties, and those dudes fly around. And that that could be because when they recruited them, that's the type of players they were in the mentality that they had. But it was probably also developed once they got here as well. So they've got 22 players that they can throw out there that they feel really good at. And what Brent does defensively is as good as anybody in the country. I mean, he threw out there a different defense Saturday night versus Tennessee than he's played the first 3 games. And that doesn't surprise me at all. And I saw a lot of things that in the run game that Tennessee was doing, even though Tennessee at the end of the night had, pretty good average running the ball, they stuck with it. But there was some. They were playing. OU was playing two robber, and their corners are cut. They're 5 yards off, and they're inside. So as soon as they see run, it's like they're blitzing, and so they're knifing in there. And when the running back's coming outside, because that's where the space is, all of a sudden there's a body there. Well, you can't cut back inside because they've got a linebacker or somebody flowing over the top that's in that gap. So they're complicated over there. They've got really good football players, and they're being coached really, really hard.
Feels like when it is working, it's working really well. And that's always been kind of a tenet for Coach Venables, whether it was at Oklahoma or at Clemson. When everybody knows what they're doing, they're really difficult to stop on that side of the ball. I'm glad that you brought up how well they recruited defensively, because this national show, Coach, but I'm going to introduce folks in a way that I don't think they understand. Coach Gundy is one of the best recruiters that ever lived, and I don't mind saying it. I really don't. He's up there with Coach Switzer, and as far as some of the guys that he helped bring into Oklahoma, Adrian Peterson could be the only guy we talk about. That could be the last guy. That could be the first guy. But so many of these guys that came to OU came because you were able to tell them what OU was about. And I want your insight, given today and where we are, transfer portal, name, image, and likeness. We're operating like pro ball clubs. What would you be telling, or what do you think the kids are hearing when you say, hey, come play football at Oklahoma?
Well, first of all, it's a challenge because you don't, because of the transfer portal and the craziness that's going on. I lived off of recruiting. I lived off of recruiting because I started and I found guys when they were freshmen and sophomores. And I mean, for 3 years, I got to know them up and down, got to know everybody in their family, all their coaches, have really deep conversations, and told them what it was going to be like when you got here. And I'm a upfront 100%. I'm going to tell you there's going to be great days, and there's going to be days where you do not like it here. And guess what? That's called life. Just go ask the person, go knock on the person next door at your house, and he'll tell you the same thing, or she'll tell you the same thing. Yeah, there's days I like life, and there's days I don't like life. And but you got to work through those things. I always believe that you got to prepare them for what's about to happen. And if they're prepared and they've been hearing this for a year, 2 years, 3 years, then it makes it much easier when they get there. Out recruiting Oklahoma players now, they're in the SEC. They've got to have some success. They've got to get up there and get in the top 3 or 4 in order to, in my opinion, sustain some recruiting level that they've been doing. They've had some success and done a good job recruiting. But if they go through 2-3 years here and can only win 6, 7, 8 games, it's going to be much more difficult. And I don't think that's going to happen. But if that does happen, it's going to get harder. They're able to go out on the road right now and tell young men, hey, come to Oklahoma. We've got all this history. We got these championships. We can do this here, and you can be a part of this. And so, as we all know, most of the best players in the country are from the southeastern part of the country. So you're asking young men to leave their backyards in Alabama's and Georgia's or Florida's or wherever, and to go halfway across the country to play in the same conference, where you could stay at home and let your family and friends and everybody see you. So they've got to have success in order to continue to get some of those guys out there, because if they don't, I think it's going to really be hard on them moving forward.
I think you're right, Coach. I'm thinking about it from an NFL perspective. There are more NFL players this year from Mississippi per capita than anybody else, right? Florida, we know what they do. Georgia, we know what they do. Texas, we live in Texas, right? That's home base down there. I got to ask it this way, Coach. You were recruiting when USC was USC, right? When Texas was going through it, when Nick Saban was getting LSU up and going, and it felt like you were recruiting against those programs as well, but you're doing it in the Big 12. What's the big difference between trying to go get the same guy from California as you might in the SEC?
Well, nowadays everybody's recruiting everybody, and it used to be years ago, especially just take Texas for an example. There used to be if there was 15 great players in Texas, let's just say 15 great players, and there's a bunch of good ones, but let's say 15 that can play for everybody in the country. Well, 7 of them were going to go to OU, 7 were going to go to Texas, and 1 was going to go to A&M. But Notre Dame wasn't coming down there. Alabama wasn't coming there. USC wasn't coming there. Oregon wasn't coming there. Miami wasn't coming there. Penn State wasn't coming there. Ohio State. Now everybody's going everywhere. And these young men are leaving to go anywhere across the country. So that's what's making it even more difficult for OU in the recruiting world. Is you even though Texas is your backyard, and even though it's right down the street, man, you got all the top dogs. I mean, you go look at the top 10 in the country right now, in the top 25, everybody's recruiting in the state of Texas. And so it's becoming more difficult to recruit the number of really good players and bring to your program because of that.